watching Morning Live. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, this week, Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Schreiber, officially gazetted two groundbreaking visa system reforms, the remote work visitor visa, as well as a new points-based system for work visas. Now, the aim of the visa reforms is to attract international skills, investment, to grow the tourism sector and also create jobs. Now, according to Schreiber, some of the visa reform elements amount to the single most progressive and pro-jobs regulatory reform that South Africa has seen in decades. And this comes as the government experienced severe visa backlogs. So to talk to us more about this, we joined virtually by Stefanie de Saude-Darbandi. Stefanie, thanks so much for your time and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Thank you so much for having me.
First off, Stefanie, the significance of the Department of Home Affairs implementing these two visa reforms.
So these two options were in fact gazetted in May. What Minister Schreiber has done is that he has made a few changes, very important changes, and then of course explained how they apply in practice and what the requirements are. And the significance, I suppose, is that, well, it is significant because it demonstrates that, you know, South Africa is now, well, he's modernizing immigration policy, he's adapting to global competition, and he's trying to be more welcoming and making policies and procedures more attracting so that we can attract more foreigners into our country. I think there's still a lot that needs to be done, but it's a step in the right direction.
Talking about attracting more foreigners into the South African workspace, you know, this is a bugbear for many South Africans, but let's talk about the sort of skills that we are talking about here and exactly how these reforms are likely to deal with challenges such as long waiting periods for those visas.
Honestly, I don't see how these are going to affect the waiting periods. Without these changes, the system still worked. Yes, it was a lot more restrictive. These changes are a bit more flexible. As I said, a lot more can be done. People like social workers, educators, for example, are still largely excluded with this point-based system, but it does allow for a lot more flexibility. However, that doesn't impact processing and quality of decision-making, which has been the biggest problem and the biggest stumbling block over the years. That is a separate issue that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. In fact, probably more so than even introducing new policies.
Which is an interesting one, because if we look at the new points-based system, for example, Stefanie, how is this reform hoping, at the very least, to make it easier to determine between critical skills and general work visas, for example?
Well, I don't really see the benefit and value for critical skills because we have a list which is very clear and which sets out what skills are critical and what the requirements are. The current list, unfortunately, excludes people with experience and no qualifications, which is unlawful and needs to be addressed, and hopefully it will be. But I suppose the point-based system it benefits the general work visa process more because that's been the problem over the last few years, especially in acquiring the recommendation from the Department of Labor. So with this point-based system, it now affords general work visa applicants a bit more flexibility. You don't need the labor recommendation. You can apply based on your qualifications and the number of years of experience. So it's and not or, when the law actually makes provision for all qualifications or experience. It does, however, present one problem. I'm sure you know about the ZEP issues and Zimbabweans that have the exemption permits. And about a month ago, the minister issued a blanket waiver to assist all ZEP applicants in waiving this labor recommendation and allowing them to apply for the general work visas without, at the time there was no point-based system. So, of course, rules don't apply retrospectively, but one does wonder how this is going to affect ZEP holders who have not yet submitted their general work visa applications, because a lot of people still are excluded. You have to have at least a master's degree, and you have to earn between 700 or 650 and 1 million rand per annum, which is quite a high threshold. So it does, as I say, still exclude rather, a number of people. And for example, as I pointed out earlier, people like social workers and educators who are very important and very crucial to the development of our country, a lot of them still won't be able to qualify for either critical skills or general work visas.
Just, on a more philosophical point, I suppose, Stefanie, South African citizens arguing that this perhaps is going to be detrimental because, as you mentioned, some of the skills like social workers, like teachers, South Africans will argue that there are unemployed teachers in South Africa. There are unemployed social workers in South Africa. So when you say that that threshold is perhaps rather steep, is there not good reason for that?
Well, I think the minister's made it clear and has proven through statistics that he's published that for every foreigner that is employed, jobs are created. So there is a value add in attracting foreigners, even at a lower skill. So I don't see that that's being the issue. And then also just a reminder that the critical skills is for people that, well, it's skills that aren't available in the labor market. So it shouldn't affect or impact the South African labor market in any way whatsoever.
So therefore, we shouldn't be bringing in foreign workers to be teachers and social workers, just to stay with your example, because we have an oversupply of those in the country at the moment.
It's not that we shouldn't be bringing these people in. We need more people. We do have South Africans. South Africa has one of the highest unemployment rates, and I think that there isn't enough jobs to cater for all the people that are unemployed. And attracting foreigners at any level, including foreign investment and including skills, helps create jobs, helps make more positions available so that South Africans can be employed. So it's not that you're replacing these foreigners with what South Africans can do, but it's in aiding to be able to create more vacancy and more positions to be able to cater for more South Africans that have certain skills that are needed and that, people that are unemployed.
So, looking at the current picture, Stefanie, how difficult has it been for international companies to send their critically skilled employees to come and work in South Africa?
It's been difficult, but not in the sense that the law has been the problem. The problem have been delays. As you know, the processing of a visa application can take a year or longer. People don't have a year longer to wait for a visa outcome. And then also the quality of decision making has been awful, and that's been a problem for a large number of years. So you spend waiting a year for an outcome only to get a wrongful rejection, which means you have to go back into the system, and appeals take even longer to process than first-time applications. So again, the difficulty has been in the application of the law and in the processing of applications.
And you've mentioned that twice now. So where does the solution lie to that, the quality of decision making? Because it's not only a lengthy process, but you say that the quality is also questionable. So where does the answer lie?
Well, I think that it lies in being properly educated, properly trained in not just the Immigration Act, but also in their duties and roles as public administrators. Most of these officials have checklists, and these checklists are not the Act and the regulations. And that's what the checklist should be. Directives, Home Affairs directives, Home Affairs policies are meant to flesh out the Act, flesh out the regulations, not replace, oust, or restrict the Act and the regulations. And I think just one big step would be having the Act and the regulations as the checklist. That has been the biggest problem. If you apply for a visa in Paris, in South Africa, in the UK, it's a separate set of rules that would apply, and that shouldn't be the case.
Well, Stefanie, it's going to be interesting, and your views certainly are that as well. Very interesting. Stefanie de Saude-Darbandi, Director and Lawyer of the De Saude-Darbandi Immigration Attorneys, talking to us about the gazetted remote work visitor visa, as well as the new points-based system for work visas, and how the reforms could attract skills, investment and tourism, but also raising some of her concerns and her views on these these particular decisions and how they could or may not necessarily make things easier.